Before dawn broke, the third-floor apartment in an aging Queens building remained cloaked in darkness. Distant car horns echoed from the avenue, occasionally drowned by the rumble of the early subway. In the damp kitchen corner, Nina Martinez stirred awake. She lay still for a few seconds, eyes fixed on the stained ceiling, before sitting up slowly, as though each movement carried the weight of a life unraveling. The tiny kitchen stood still, quiet, like the storm inside her. She opened the fridge. Half a carton of milk, a few cracked eggs, and 3 potatoes already sprouting. Nina exhaled slowly, closing it with a sigh. She moved to the pantry, an almost empty bag of flour and some lonely dried beans. Her last unemployment checks had nearly dried up. The bedroom door creaked open. Mia, Nina's 7-year-old daughter, shuffled out, rubbing her eyes. "Mom, do we still have any bread?" Nina turned and smiled gently. "We do, sweetheart." She pulled out the final slice, split it, and popped it into the toaster. "Want warm milk too?" "Yes, please." While her daughter sat nibbling her breakfast, Nina flipped through a stack of overdue bills. An electricity notice threatening disconnection, unpaid rent for the month, a medical bill from Mia's fever last week. She clenched her fists suddenly, swallowing down the panic. She used to be a cook at a small diner by the station, but it closed last winter. Since then, she'd done it all. Cleaning jobs, food delivery, babysitting, but nothing lasted. As Mia went to get ready for school, Nina stared at a small wooden box perched above the fridge, the place she kept her emergency coins. Inside were just a few crumpled $1 bills and a handful of coins. Empty. Her pockets and her spirit. The knock on the door broke Nina's stillness at the kitchen table. She quickly wiped her tears, stood up, and opened it. "It's me, Angela." The familiar voice was followed by the warm smile of the elderly woman from the floor below. Angela was Nina's only real friend in the old building, the one who watched Mia during those late-night shifts. "You didn't sleep again, did you?" Angela asked, her eyes catching the redness in Nina's. "Things are just worse than I expected." Nina exhaled, quietly motioning toward the near-empty pantry. Angela said nothing for a moment, then suddenly smiled. "You know, back when my mother was still around, she used to sell coconut pastries outside the garment factory. She'd bake all night, then walk over with a cart. One time she made enough to cover the whole week." Nina stared at her. A hazy image formed in her memory. The tiny kitchen back in the Bronx, the sound of a spoon stirring syrup, the smell of toasted coconut filling the air. She was just a little girl, waiting to lick the spoon after her abuela finished a batch of coconut candy. "My grandmother used to make coconut candy too," Nina whispered to herself. "What's that?" "Coconut candy. She made it with shredded coconut, sugar, and condensed milk. Everyone in the neighborhood used to buy them." The silence shifted. Something had changed. Nina walked over to the wooden box on top of the fridge and opened it again. She counted the coins. Just enough for a bag of shredded coconut, some sugar, and 1 can of condensed milk. "Do you think it's enough for the ingredients?" Angela nodded. "Absolutely. I even have some plastic wrappers you can use." For a moment, Nina's eyes held something they hadn't shown in a long time. Hope. That night, after dropping Mia off at Angela's, Nina got to work. Her tiny kitchen glowed with the soft amber light of an old bulb. The sweet scent of coconut swirled through the apartment, blending with the warmth of melting condensed milk and sugar. She stirred constantly, recalling her abuela's every movement. Gentle, precise, always careful not to burn the mixture. By nearly 2 a.m., she had rolled and wrapped 100 coconut candies, each one nestled inside clear plastic wrap. Exhausted, but for the first time in weeks, she felt a fragile kind of peace. The next morning, Nina wore her least torn pair of jeans and a plain gray sweater. She tied her hair back, packed 2 boxes of candy into a brown paper bag, and took the subway to Jackson Heights, a bustling hub near the subway junction and open-air markets. The first hours were brutal. People rushed by without even glancing at her. Some frowned, others waved her off. A building security guard asked her to move along. A group of teenagers chuckled when she offered them the candy box. Her hands ached from the cold March wind, and the candies sat untouched, like forgotten hopes. But Nina didn't give up. She moved from the market to the subway station, from there to the corner store. Around noon, a middle-aged woman finally stopped. Homemade? Yes, my grandmother's recipe. She took one bite and instantly bought 5. Next came 2 high school girls, each buying 3. Then a sugarcane vendor traded her a bottle of juice for 5 candies. These are surprisingly good, said a man who bought 6 more for his co-workers. By early afternoon, half the first box was gone. Nina counted the bills, just enough to restock her ingredients and buy a little food for tomorrow. But she knew it wasn't enough. She needed more. A decision sparked in her. Midtown, a major intersection, full of office workers and cab drivers. More eyes, more chances. She took the next train, clutching her box of candies like it held the last hope she had. As the Midtown sky dimmed into shades of orange and blue, the rush hour grew more frantic. Headlights glinted off towering glass buildings, throwing streaks of brightness across the chaos. Nina stood at a street corner near the traffic light, holding her box of candy, gently offering them to drivers when the light turned red. Good afternoon. Would you like to try a homemade coconut candy? My grandmother's recipe, made fresh this morning. A sleek black SUV rolled to a stop right in front of her. The tinted window slid down slowly, like a breath being held. Nina froze. Inside sat a man in a dark suit, hazel eyes that held a flicker of memory and a smile carved by time. Nina? His voice, deep, uncertain, as if afraid the past might vanish if spoken too loudly. She couldn't respond right away. The box in her hands trembled. Leo? The light turned green, horns blared behind him. Leo gestured for her to wait and pulled into a nearby curb. He stepped out, still carrying the calm confidence she remembered. But now, he brought with him a world she had never belonged to. I can't believe it's really you, Leo said, his smile wide. I could say the same, Nina replied softly. His gaze dropped to the candy box. These? Are they the same coconut candies your abuela Celia used to make? That name, her grandmother's, hit Nina like a heartbeat from the past. Same recipe. I needed a way to make ends meet, she said honestly. Leo didn't say much. He just unwrapped one, took a bite, and closed his eyes. For a moment, he was no longer the man in the luxury car. He was the boy in the Bronx backyard, climbing trees and sneaking candy. I'll take the whole box. What? There are over 40 pieces. Perfect. I'll bring them to my office. People need to know what real coconut candy tastes like. He pulled a $100 0-cent bill from his wallet and placed it in her hand. She tried to give back the change, but he waved it off. Call it an investment in nostalgia. Before leaving, Leo looked at her for a long moment. Do you have a few minutes? There's a cafe nearby. Feels like it's been ages since we talked. And for the first time in months, Nina nodded without hesitation. A chance encounter, but it felt like coming home. The cafe was tucked between 2 old red brick buildings in the Flatiron district. Leo led the way, and they took a small table by the window. Conversation flowed easily, as if no years had passed, about Abuela Celia, summers in the Bronx, and their lives since. Nina spoke of the long months without stable work, of the odd jobs, cleaning, handing out flyers, just to make ends meet for Mia. Leo listened intently, never interrupting, his eyes filled with quiet empathy. This place serves strong coffee, he said, sipping his espresso. The owner's a close friend of mine from college. He's always looking for quality handcrafted items, baked goods, candies, anything with a story behind it. Nina furrowed her brows. You mean, I think he'd love your candy. If you're open to it, I can set up a meeting tomorrow. You can bring some samples. She hesitated. Are you sure? I don't have a brand, no labels. Just my grandmother's recipe and a tiny kitchen. That's exactly what makes it special, Leo smiled. I'll help you get ready, and if it works out, I can offer the use of a commercial kitchen space in one of my buildings free until you're on your feet. Nina looked at him, her heart a mix of gratitude and uncertainty. It had been a long time since anyone said, "I'll help you," without expecting something in return. "All you need to do is try," Leo added. "The rest, we'll figure it out, together." Nina nodded, realizing, maybe for the first time, that those little candies might be the beginning of something much bigger. The good news came sooner than Nina expected. The cafe owner, a cheerful man named Paul, fell in love with her coconut candy on the first bite. He offered to start with a small order 3 times a week. Nina was overjoyed, almost in disbelief, but Leo simply smiled, "Told you so." She began production in her tiny apartment kitchen, working late into the night with help from Angela and curious little Mia. The candies got their name, Abuela's Sweets, a gift from memory. Things were finally shifting. But not everyone was pleased. Vanessa, Leo's longtime girlfriend and a sharp marketing executive, sensed a growing threat in Nina's frequent presence. She couldn't ignore the look in Leo's eyes when he spoke of the candy woman, an expression he hadn't given her in months. "Coconut candy?" she quipped over dinner with Leo, voice thick with sarcasm. "Sounds adorable." He didn't respond, just nodded, but to Vanessa, that silence was more dangerous than agreement. A week later, Leo hosted a corporate event to launch a new real estate project. Though reluctant, Vanessa took the lead in event planning and made a show of inviting Nina to provide desserts under the guise of goodwill. "You said they love her candy, didn't you?" She smiled sweetly at Nina, though her eyes were cold. "Let's serve it properly then." Nina agreed, bringing fresh batches of handmade coconut candy and coconut cakes beautifully arranged. But when she arrived, her assigned display table was tucked in a far-off corner near the tech booth, practically invisible to the main guests. "Must be a mistake," she told herself. Then came the second blow. Before the main event even began, she was informed her desserts had already been served at a private pre-reception for VIPs only. By the time Nina reached the main room, her table was empty, nothing left to showcase, nothing to present. Only a hollow ache, and one quiet question in her heart. Was this an accident, or was it planned? That evening, Nina sat alone on the subway ride home, the now empty candy box beside her. Not because she'd sold out, but because the treats had vanished before anyone knew who made them. She had held her composure during the event, but now the emotions broke free. She had dared to hope, poured her heart into every piece, but in the end, no guest knew her name. No one had heard of Abuela's Sweets. Angela had picked up Mia, and the apartment kitchen still glowed warmly. Nina set the bag down, turned on the stove out of habit. Her hands remembered the motions, even if her heart felt uncertain. The next morning, something unexpected happened. A man called her. "Mrs. Nina Martinez? This is Roberto Tanaka, business partner of Leo Bennett. I was at the event last night, and I've never seen dessert disappear that quickly." Nina blinked, surprised. "My wife wants to place an order for our daughter's birthday. Do you take custom requests?" She nearly choked up. "Yes, of course." As the call ended, she sank into her chair. Maybe Vanessa had buried her presence, but flavor couldn't be hidden, and someone had noticed. She glanced at the wall clock, then moved to the counter, pulling out her notebook to rewrite the recipe. The next batch would be even better, not just for the new order, but because she refused to let this be the end. 3 days after the event, Leo showed up at Nina's door. He stood there looking worn. No tailored suit, just jeans and a rolled-up shirt. His eyes, for the first time in years, held genuine unease. "Can I come in?" Nina nodded. Inside the small kitchen, the sweet scent of freshly made coconut candy lingered. Mia played quietly in her room. Angela had gone to the store. It was just the two of them. "I know what happened," Leo began. "Vanessa, she planned it. She admitted it after I confronted her." Nina stayed silent, watching him. "I'm sorry, I didn't think it would go that far. I never should have let you be in that position just because of who you are." "I'm used to being pushed aside," Nina replied softly. "But this time, I really thought it might be different." Leo looked at her, serious. "I ended things with Vanessa, not for you, not just because of that night, but because I realized I haven't been myself around her for a long time." He paused, then continued. But when I saw you again, the way you care for your daughter, the way you fight every day and still hold on to kindness, it reminded me of who I used to be. The air stilled. Nina felt something rise inside her. A feeling, not of expectation, but of something familiar. Safe. I can't promise anything, she said quietly. I have a child, a business. I'm not the kind of woman your world usually makes room for. You're the kind of woman that world needs, Leo said gently. We don't have to name this. I just want a chance to walk beside you, one step at a time. Nina looked down, then smiled, a real smile, the first in months. Then, one step at a time it is. 2 months after that fateful conversation, Abuela Sweets was no longer just a box of candy on a sidewalk. Nina now had her own commercial kitchen, thanks to a space Leo offered in one of his buildings in Long Island City. She hired 2 neighbors, one a former bakery worker, the other a culinary student. Work was busier, but steadier than ever. She began receiving orders from 2 additional cafes in the city thanks to recommendations from Paul and Roberto Tanaka. Boxes with the Abuela's Sweets logo, featuring a hand-drawn design by Mia, started appearing regularly on display shelves. Customers loved the story behind every bite. They said, it tastes like home. As for family, Nina, though she still kept her old apartment, was now spending most weekdays at Leo's place. Mia had her own room, and her tiny wardrobe slowly grew in both homes. Angela joked, Celia's granddaughter finally found her new kitchen. Nina smiled. She remained cautious, still guarded, but she couldn't deny her heart was softening. One evening, while Nina was packaging a fresh batch of candy, Mia ran in, her face glowing. Can I call Leo Dad? Nina froze. Before she could answer, Leo stepped into the room. He had heard the question, and instead of surprise, he knelt down. Looking Mia in the eye, if that's what you want, it would be my greatest honor. Mia nodded firmly. Because you always make me feel safe, like a dad does. And in that coconut-scented kitchen, something even greater than success began. A family. One Wednesday morning, while reviewing orders, Nina's phone rang. The voice on the other end was bubbling with excitement. Miss Nina, this is Allison from Taste of New York. We'd love to interview you. She froze. Interview? Why? Allison laughed. Your candy went viral. A TikTok video from the Chelsea Cafe shows a customer biting into your coconut candy and tearing up, saying it reminds them of their grandma. Over 2 million views. Less than 24 hours later, a film crew arrived. Nina appeared in her usual apron, telling the story of starting with a handful of coins, a tiny kitchen, and her grandmother's recipe. The episode aired and orders tripled. Articles followed. Her inbox flooded with partnership offers. That night, Nina sat by the window, city lights from Manhattan casting a soft glow. Leo poured her a cup of tea. You're stepping into a new chapter, he said, and I just need to know, is there room in that chapter for me? She was silent. So much had changed in so little time. She felt joy, but also fear. Fear of dependence, of losing what she'd built on her own. You don't have to answer now, Leo added. I just want you to know, no matter what you choose, I'll support you. Nina looked at him, then out at the street. A yellow cab passed by, lights blinking. She nodded slowly. Then let's keep walking, one step at a time. 1 year after the viral video, Abuela Sweets had its own booth at the famous Brooklyn Market Food Hall. Each candy was wrapped in hand-printed paper designed by Mia with a small phrase, made with love and memory. Nina hired more staff, started weekend candy-making classes for kids to keep the heritage alive, she'd say. Those classes often ended with stories about Abuela Celia, the woman who never truly left her heart. And Leo, he wasn't just a partner, he became her quiet anchor. No pressure, no rushed labels, just shared dinners, lazy Sundays in the park, and a place all 3 called home. One evening, with Mia asleep on the couch, a storybook on her chest, Nina looked at Leo and whispered, I once thought loving again was a luxury I couldn't afford. He smiled, taking her hand. And now? Now I know sometimes the most powerful love doesn't come when you seek it. It comes when you've finally made peace with walking alone and someone chooses to match your stride. She rested her head on his shoulder. The kitchen light still glowed. The scent of coconut candy floated gently in the air. An ending? No, just a new beginning, built on love, memory, and trust. As time passed, Nina and Leo gradually built a life together, one that felt whole. The early hesitation faded. The line between their worlds disappeared. What remained were quiet breakfasts, shared story times with Mia, and a kitchen that always smelled of coconut candy. Mia grew even closer to Leo. She called him Dad with ease, as if it had always been that way. One spring morning, Nina rested her hand on her belly and smiled. This time, she wasn't afraid. She wasn't alone. In Leo's arms, she awaited their second child with quiet joy. The baby girl arrived on a bright June morning. They named her Jasmine, in honor of Abuela Celia, whose recipe, memories, and courage had helped Nina change her life. Abuela's sweets kept growing. Nina became the lead curator for traditional foods in a major urban redevelopment project. Her name appeared in newspapers, on TV, but her smile remained the same, just like the one she wore the first day she stood at the traffic light, offering her very first candy. From a single mother selling coconut candy on a corner, Nina had become a symbol of strength, love, and quiet belief. One summer afternoon, in their backyard, Mia, now older, knelt down to teach little Jasmine how to blow soap bubbles. Laughter filled the golden air. The sight pulled Nina back in time, to sticky fingers, coconut flakes on the counter, and Abuela Celia humming softly in a tiny Bronx kitchen. Life, it seemed, had come full circle. Only now, the love was passed down through generations and carried forward with joy. Nearby, Nina sat with Leo hand in hand. She knew now, what had changed her fate wasn't luck or timing. It was human connection. It was kindness. And the courage to keep walking forward, even when the road ahead was unclear.